High school principal put on leave for daring to question social media censorship. Banned from his job for protesting people being banned from social media. Sounds about right in Biden's America. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start in Tennessee, where a high school principal has been placed on leave after comparing the latest social media shutdown of conservatives to a kind of McCarthyism. And look, this episode of the Dr. Duke Show is going to be about cancel. How now it's okay to cancel people for being Republican. It's okay to cancel people for being conservative. It's okay to fire and cancel people who just voted for Donald Trump. This is what's on display today. This show could have taken 8 hours because we have so many examples of it, and we're only getting started. And so Tyranny Week on the Dr. Duke Show begins again with canceling of people who just don't see the world in liberal ways. A sarcastic question to ask you again.
When are they not sarcastic?
They're always sarcastic. When was the last time you've seen a liberal teacher call names, call Trump names, argue that it should be okay to kill conservatives? How many times have we seen that in the last 4 years? Ubiquitously. Where you've ever had them pulled and yanked this quickly, immediately under investigation.
Well, if they were pulled or yanked, and I don't know what connotation you're going with, they would have been replaced, put back right away, back into the rubber band man.
That's right. It was all for show.
Yes.
And literally, what did this guy do except question publicly something that should be questioned? Should any major corporations like this have the right to simply censor people because of their worldview? And for that, now he's on leave.
This poor principal named Barton Thorne, who's a principal at Cordova High School in Memphis, Tennessee, as you said, dared to just question, just kind of put it out there, see what's going on. The good news of all this administrative leave is it's paid for now, so yay. But here's what happened. So he made some remarks. I guess if you want to watch the whole thing, it's a little bit over 9 minutes long. And he commented on freedom of speech. And he zeroed in specifically on what social media platforms are doing, and the ones who specifically have blocked President Trump, which is pretty much all of them except Parler, which got blocked by the other ones because Free Speech America. So according to the various news outlets, the principal at Cordova High School has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the review of the comments that were made. And I guess he was critical. Throne was critical of the riots at the Capitol, and he objected to actions taken by several social media platforms. Now, specifically, there was a comment comparing McCarthyism. And if you're around way back in the days of Joseph McCarthy, you may remember it. I would say you have to be alive during that time period because Lord knows we don't actually teach you about it anymore.
Well, the reality, guys, is that Joe McCarthy was right. There were communists in government. And there were communist sympathizers. That's a fact. Now, again, was McCarthy over the top? Did McCarthy come down too hard somehow on this? But the reality is that there were, right? This is not denied anymore. There were. That's one thing. And that was in the 1950s, right?
Yeah, and he actually said during his whole 9-minute speech thing, he says, because there have been times even in American history where a small group of people decided what you could hear. Right. You think about McCarthyism. That's what he said.
It's just not a good analogy.
He just mentioned it,
It's not a good analogy.
If you don't know about that, you can Google that or talk to your social studies teacher.
Yeah, how many social...
Exactly. I laughed when I read that comment. I was like,
look,
oh. Anyway.
Here's the thing. This principal said he did not. He condemned the riot or the fake attack on the White House, whatever you want to call it, the false flag, whatever you want to call it. He condemned it. Number one. Number two. He also pointed out that he was not particularly interested in defending Donald Trump's right to speech. That wasn't this. He just by being critical of those things, he said, look, we need to look at the power that these social media companies have to censor people and to platform them for advancing opinions that go against the mainstream progressive. And that's all he said. And why would you suspend him for that? Again, to get suspended as a liberal, you have to threaten to kill somebody. You have to say, we should kill more. You have to say something really like that teacher of the year, right?
Because it was whoever attacked Rand Paul, those same people, they should go get Mitch McConnell.
Right. And that teacher of the year in Kentucky was not suspended for that. This guy simply asked a question about censorship. and they've already suspended him, and wonderful people, they're paying him.
And of course, they're reviewing the comments and all this,
Yes.
but in true fashion, we must bow down to our overlords and apologize for everything that we do. Now, according to
Barton, so here's his apology.
Barton L. Thorne. What a name. Barton L. Thorne. Good afternoon. I had 3 people voice thoughts on my homeroom video from this morning. I know that it's not a lot, but I also know that not everyone is comfortable with saying something. I try very hard not to trespass into political or religious issues in my official capacity, and that was not my intention this morning. The fact that 2 of the people felt I did that means that I was not successful in expressing my thoughts. Email is not a medium that lends itself to nuanced expression, so I'll not attempt it here. But if you are one who felt that I forayed too far into the political, I do apologize and welcome a chance for a one-on-one if you feel it's necessary. How many feelings are in that statement?
No kidding. Barton, you lost. I hope they suspend you with pay. Even though you're right, you deserve what you get. Do you see what you just did, Barton Thorne? You just apologized because a couple of people said you were political when you weren't being political. You didn't call out the politics of the social media giants. You simply said censorship is a serious thing. You did not weigh in on that. You did not weigh on politics because you have such a radicalized faculty, which is true of all schools now because of how they get the degrees. You allowed a couple of radicalized lefty punks convince you were talking about politics when you weren't, and then you went on this really cringe-worthy apology tour. Stop it. You don't deserve the sympathy of the American people. If you constantly tip your hat, oh gosh, 2 people said that this was me entering the realm of politics. Defending speech is the job of all Americans under the Constitution. It's what your politicians sign on to when they become they take elected office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And for you have to apologize for that now in this wheedling, whining way. Just contrast what happened last week in Kentucky, right, where a teacher of the year basically says, let's go after Mitch McConnell the same violent way we went after Rand Paul, with a fake apology is all he had to offer. You, on the other hand, were making a broad statement about free speech, and you have to apologize for that. It shows you have your finger way too much on the pulse of the left-wing aspect of your school.
Now, as we know, you cannot be even neutral anymore because that will also get you fired. You be political, you get fired. You be
non-political, you get suspended.
Fired. Any of these things. Well, we have Bookmobile Librarian, and if you don't know what Bookmobile is, basically a library on wheels. They come to you. Now, a Bookmobile librarian named Ron Kelly is aware of how you can't be neutral. You can't be neutral after he got fired from a library that was serving the Navajo Nation in Flagstaff, Arizona. Kelly basically checked out the Association of Bookmobile and Outreach Services listserv. So a librarian did a little research on their little listserv, okay? And this was back in the summertime in June. And there was a message on there from the American Library Association, the ALA, and they talked about keeping up with current social justice issues. So the library's trying to be hip, right? And they're trying to, keep up and be informed about what's happening so they can inform their patrons.
Pretty much to do everything but oversee books.
Basically. And the statement said, our newest installment is Libraries Respond. Black Lives Matter. The library profession suffers from a persistent lack of racial and ethnic diversity that shows few signs of improving. Many people are feeling helpless, but there are many ways we can center the voices and experiences of Black library workers and the Black community, support the broader Black Lives Matter movement, fight against police violence, and further the cause of racial justice.
Everything you think when you walk into a library, right? That I'm what I want.
This resource provides key definitions and concrete tools for library workers on how they can be involved in the Black Lives Matter movement, from resources on educating yourself to critically examining library policies. Libraries.
By the way, do you see how you don't have a choice?
Yeah.
If you want to be involved with libraries, this is what you will do.
So here's what Mr. Kelly decided to do. Wrote a response calling for neutrality, because you're a library, saying overt politicization of this listserv will destroy this forum. Do members want a political battlefield, strong-armed by ALA-sanctioned propaganda, or an open exchange forum for outreach improvement? Or truly, in the heart of our festering culture wars, are only dictated political perspectives permitted about library outreach programs in these discussions? Such ham-handed totalitarian directives are apparently endorsed by ABOS as well as the ALA, to the obvious exclusion of other views. Will this ABOS discussion group kick out, censor, individuals who advocate for a non-political forum?
And the answer is yes.
Yes, they will. And not only that, but he got fired from his job. It's, you got to go read this thing. It is it's kind of, they compared it in the news article to Jerry Maguire going off, but they said this guy didn't get a goldfish at the end, like Jerry Maguire did.
He didn't get shown the money either, did he?
He didn't get the money, he didn't get the girl, he didn't get anything.
Nope, his ass got canned for simply saying, do we have to drag politics into everything? And what if I like this guy. What about people who disagree with you? What about people who don't see librarians or library science as an entree into the world of Black Lives Matter? Just because you signed in to work with books and libraries, you have to suddenly become an activist? And the answer is yes, so they're going to fire you.
That's why my mother retired. But anyway, here's what Kelly wants. Libraries and this discussion forum should remain apolitical. Oh, how dare you say that?
Silence is violence.
Silence is violence. ALA and ABOS, apparently now in tow by the neck, adheres to one-dimensional thought and heralding a single political view while implicitly dismissing, censoring others' perspectives, something akin to Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. Look at that. He gave a book reference in a library. Oh, snap.
And it's going to be, we're going to talk about we got a quote from 451.
Oh, my. Or Orwell's masterpieces. Ignoring some strains of thought and relentlessly highlighting and overtly advocating for others is a discrete form of censorship, as any librarian knows in collection development. Library workers are supposed to be informed. They ought to be readers and open wide the doors to all visitors, not shut or narrow them.
This guy, he's got some cojones on him. I mean, he's looking the monster in the eye, and with a great big FU, going to pay a terrible price for it.
Yes.
But nevertheless.
But hey,
talk about speaking truth to power.
There it is. Because this was such an interesting, and there's more to it, I'm just cutting out pieces that he wrote. As I say, read it yourself, because I appreciate what he's done from someone in the library world. He's gotten a lot of responses. And I'm going to give him a little shout out because he's writing a book. But he's gotten a lot of responses from librarians privately thanking him for his comments, but all asked for anonymity and refused to support him publicly for fear they too would be left out of work. They're librarians. They don't make a lot of money, okay?
Hey, wait, can you stop for a second? I mean, this is the situation we've created in this country. That if you support somebody who's simply trying to support balance and neutrality, or somebody who's simply trying to defend the right to disagree, you have to do it anonymously. You can't let it be known that you're doing it.
Yes. So what he's doing now, librarian Turnit, making his own book talking about the fall of the American library. And so if you're a librarian, you know librarians, have them get in touch with him. His email is freethink1, Free think1 at protonmail.com. Freethink1 at protonmail.com.
How many libraries and librarians, once the book is written, do you think will actually allow this book inside?
I think, they won't allow it inside, but I think he could get a lot of comments from recently retired librarians, because there's definitely a shift of the library guard. I've seen it, like, being on the inside world it's a definite shift. Like
with everything else that this social justice critical race theory infects, it's not about so when we teach critical race theory in the schools, it's not about education anymore. It's about indoctrination. When you adopt the Black Lives Matter attitude in the public libraries, it's not about books, it's not about stewarding books, it's not about raising literacy, it's about politicization. Every time they get their hooks into things, they transform it into something nothing more than socialist agitprop and propaganda.
Oh, Harvard, doing the Harvard type things where they cancel everyone they don't like because they're not Harvard elite. So they just decided to remove a representative named Elise Stefanik, who's a Republican, so of course, cut her out. She's from New York, and she was from the Senior Advisory Board of the university's Institute of Politics. So she's on the board, but nope. they must kick her out because she's not Harvard elite enough because she made the simple claim about voter fraud that apparently has no basis in evidence. Now, according to an open letter by Doug Elmendorf, who's the dean of the faculty of the Kennedy School, he's the one who stated the order removing her. He first asked her to resign, but she refused. And so I spoke with Elise and asked her to step aside from the senior advisory committee. My request was not about political parties, political ideology, or her choice of candidate for president. Rather, in my assessment, Elise has made public assertions about voter fraud in November's presidential election that have no basis in evidence.
Now, wait a second. There have been thousands of sworn affidavits attesting to voter fraud. And by pointing those out now, you're making assertions without proof? This is what blows me away. Anybody who questions the election fraud, whether you believe it happened or not, there are people who were in the rooms. There were people who were watching. There were people who were Republicans who were dragged out of rooms so they couldn't watch votes be counted. These are serious, legitimate things. And to simply bring them up now means you can be fired, you can be let go of your job, and the answer is yes. If you question the election, this election was perfect. There was no voter fraud. Everything happened the way it was supposed to, from states quitting count in the middle of the night in unison, only to come back in the morning with huge vote swings. People who have watched those machines flip votes in the space of seconds, hundreds of thousands going from one column to the other. But you can't talk about that. You can't use that as an excuse of voter fraud. It didn't happen. It's over. It's all a big lie. And anybody who believes it now is worthy of losing their positions. So you're not after her because she's a Republican. You're not after her because she's a Trump supporter. How dare she question the possibility that there was voter fraud?
All right, I'm just going to be straight with all of you. It doesn't matter what election it is. It could be your local high school student council president election. There is voter fraud. Every single election. Every single one. Have you not watched the movie Black Sheep? If you haven't, you probably should. You should watch Tommy Boy first, but then watch Black Sheep because it shows just this.
See, this is the big lie that is now enabling the other lies. This is the big lie, that this election went off without a hitch. That this election, clearly and without problems, there's nothing to talk about, nothing to see. That's the big lie. Once you buy that, then you can have a zero tolerance policy to anybody who doesn't take that party line, which is what happened to Miss Stefanik.
All right, so she actually is an alum of Harvard, and I'm surprised they're probably going to come for her degree, too, because they're coming for everyone's degree.
And she was the only Republican or conservative on this entire board.
So
the only one.
She had a response, a good one here. She says, as a conservative Republican, it is a rite of passage and a badge of honor to join the long line of leaders who have been boycotted, protested, and canceled by colleges and universities across America. See, that's the ticket right there. It's a badge of honor, as she says. So get canceled, everyone, because if you're not doing it, well, you're not cool.
Well, she still got her job in Congress,
well,
right?
Yeah, this is just Harvard.
So it's easy to take that tone when you've lost next to nothing.
Well, be brave and lose everything. Now, the decision by Harvard's administration to cower and cave to the woke left will continue to erode diversity of thought, public discourse, and ultimately the student experience. The Ivory Towers march toward a monoculture of like-minded, intolerant liberal views illustrates the sneering disdain for everyday Americans and will instill a culture of fear for students who will understand that a conservative viewpoint that will not be tolerated and will be silenced. These are all the things that we have absolutely seen go on the college campus.
Well said. This is exactly right. And the idea that you're getting rid of the one, this is what drives me nuts about universities. Rather than see how overstocked you are with doctrinaire liberals and try to pare that crowd down, you got to isolate the one person who's not and go after them. It's endless, right? Childish. Well, good for you, Congresswoman Stefanik. You had the right attitude. Sadly, that little manifesto you wrote is not going to influence a single small-minded person at Harvard, not one.
It's time now for some real education. Published in 1953, Fahrenheit 451 is a dystopian novel by American writer Ray Bradbury. The novel is about an American society where books are outlawed and firemen burn any that turn up. The main character, Guy Montag, is a fireman who begins to question his role of censoring literature and destroying knowledge.
Fahrenheit 451 is an interesting book, nice little piece of science fiction, actually more of a soft junior-senior high school book than it is really a college book necessarily, but it too is a dystopia. It gives you a dystopian future. As I said, all week as we transition away from the Trump administration and toward a Biden administration, this is Tyranny Week on the Dr. Duke Show, and we're talking about all of these dystopias, all of these books written, almost all of them by left-wingers, people of the left, including our author here, right, is a man of the left. And so dystopias are books that warn you what happens when human beings decide that they can sociologically make everything perfect, that they can somehow bring heaven to earth. How do you do that, unfortunately? Many of our left-wing friends have recognized by censoring people, by taking away their opportunities, by deplatforming peoples. Over the last 100 years, we've had dozens and dozens of these dystopic books written by almost exclusively left-wing writers warning that this day would come. Well, it has come. So here's a quote from Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, and we can get a sense of this. In his dystopic future, quote, remember, firemen. What a great name for those who come to burn books. They are firemen, right? I love the way that they have co-opted something that is really noble. Firemen rush into blazes to save people's lives. But in this dystopic progressive future, the firemen are the ones who come to burn your books. Remember, the firemen are rarely necessary. The public itself stopped reading of its own accord. How is that for a prediction for today? The left doesn't have to burn books, even though they're banning books like Huckleberry Finn and To Kill a Mockingbird. We did shows on this the last couple of weeks. They're not burning them yet. They're just banning them. The reason, what Bradbury says is so brilliant, remember, the firemen are rarely necessary. We rarely have to send them out to burn your books. The public itself stopped reading of its own accord. You firemen provide a circus now and then, at which buildings are set off as crowds gather for the pretty blaze. But the reality is that in a world where nobody reads, no one has to formally censor books. And if you ask me, the single reason we're in the trouble we are today is we stopped teaching kids real books, substituted progressive and socialist books instead, and now they have no ability to read real books. If they were able to read real books like this, we might have a better chance of fighting off the kind of censorship and deplatforming that now is going to be everywhere. Congratulations, Joe Biden. It's going to be a hell of a ride.
Now, we want to take a moment, as we do from time to time here, to show some love for our Patriot Club members because they're the ones who keep this show going. And today, we're going to give a shout out to Jeff from Greenville, South Carolina. Thank you, Jeff, for watching the show and supporting us. And if you're a fan of this show and want to support us, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support the Patriot Club. And we're going to give you this little awesome tumbler. It's just a small thank you. All you have to do to sign up is visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. Now we're going to wrap things up with our fun fact of the day. Librarian jobs are expected to grow about 9% by 2026, which equates to about 12,000 jobs. So if you want to work in a library and maybe end up like our friend Mr. Kelly, well, I guess go get your library science degree and then you too can write a long diatribe and get fired.
9% growth in libraries, even though there are fewer books that are being allowed to read and a lot fewer libraries.
Other services. There's
right?
other services.
Other services, which it means Black Lives Matter, right? Let's just do it now. Let's transform, get rid of all those nasty books and transform every library into a recruitment area for Black Lives Matter propaganda and really make people happy. And that, my friends, wraps up this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.